Welcome to this week's Master Coaches Buzz hosted by John Foreman. We continue to update all our viewers on the most current issues, trends, and conversations with leaders in the sport. From the AVCA to the USA Men's National Team, to women's and men's collegiate volleyball, to the new women's professional volleyball leagues, to USAV junior volleyball, and most recently, the status of JVA and the JVA World Challenge. Now, let's go to former Olympic coach Mick Haley, who will introduce our special guest today. Mick?
Mick is muted.
Yeah, there you go.
My privilege. Somebody put me on mute there. I didn't do that myself, so I'm in trouble already. But it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Bill Stetson, who's an orthopedic surgeon with Stetson Powell, located in Burbank, California. He's also an Associate Adjunct Clinical Professor at the USC Keck School of Medicine. And Bill is also the head physician for both our USA men's and women's national teams and both of our volleyball Olympic teams. Really pleased to have you on, Bill.
Well, Mick, it's really a pleasure to be here and to join this conversation. I'd just like to say it's also a pleasure to have the company of such great coaches. I know all of you and I followed all of your careers, and it's just really a pleasure to be a part of this symposium. And hopefully we can, during the next half hour, we can shed a little bit of light on exactly what this virus is doing and how we can get all of our athletes, you know, whether they're high school, collegiate, or even professional, how we can get them back into the gymnasium or also onto the field safely. And I think that's really important.
That the last time that we really had a good conversation was when I was coaching about 23 years ago. I was coaching the national team, and I was driving in for practice and with my coffee cup like I do every day, and that thing jumped right out of my hand, exploded against the dash and sliced my palm. I don't know if you remember this. So I pulled into the training center, went in, asked for a doctor, and lo and behold, who comes out to sew me up but Billy Stetson. That's the first time I knew you were in medical practice at all. How long did it take you working through that? That was probably 1997, if I'm not mistaken, or 98. How long did it take you to become a national team doctor?
You know, great question, Nick. I remember that very clearly because we were at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. And that was my first stint at the training center. And to become an Olympic team doctor for any sport, you have to spend time at the different Olympic training centers. So I spent 2 weeks there. I remember it very well. We take care of not only the volleyball team, but everybody else. I remember stitching that finger. I even gave you a little bit of local medication so it wouldn't hurt too bad. I hope it healed up okay.
Yeah, I'm doing really good. And I still appreciate that, but that was really fun. So let me move forward because there are a lot of questions here, and I'll just start out with one. But this is very interesting for you. You're a physician, you're with our national team, but you also have 4 kids. And with this virus, we've had over 100,000 COVID-19 deaths in the United States so far from this virus. We have no vaccine yet. And yet we're opening up the country for business as we speak right now. In fact, a lot of restrictions are being dropped today in various states. Can we safely open up sport? And if so, how? And maybe you could answer this in regards to how you would think about putting your kids in activities also as you answer.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mick. As we know, this coronavirus is something that really blindsided all of us. It's sort of a mutation of a regular, what we say, coronavirus, which is the common cold. But it mutated, and now it has this sort of, it's a very virulent virus, meaning it can be very deadly, and it's very contagious. So what we have learned, and again, our science is being updated constantly as we learn more about it. Exactly how this virus is transmitted from one person to another, and also why is it more common in some people than not in others? And I think that's very, very important. And what we've seen is that there's very few young people that are getting this virus, whereas it seems to be attacking older people or those people with significant other medical conditions, as we say. In the state of California, as you probably know, half of the deaths from the COVID-19 have been in our nursing homes. That's a huge problem. And it tells us the majority of the problem is in those people who are elderly or with significant medical problems. So for our younger people, I actually feel pretty good about getting them back into their sports. I think if we do this in a smart manner, we practice good hand washing. You know, social distancing is kind of hard when you've got 12 kids in a gym and everybody's doing drills. I just don't think that's going to be practical along the way. To start, I think that will be everybody's comfort level. But I think pretty soon you're going to see that this virus isn't going to attack these young people. It's really attacking the older people. I will say that even if they get it, they're probably going to survive it. It's going to be a bad flu for them, but it's not going to hurt them. What I worry about is them transmitting it to their grandparents or other people at home. So I think they have to, when they go home, they have to bathe, change their clothes, and wash things up. So I think that's a good way to look at it.
Okay.
Brian
There we
Gimmillaro, longtime national team, longtime Long Beach State head coach and national championship coach, is going to come on next, and he's got a question for you, Bill.
Bill, thank you for being on the program. You know, I listened to the studies, and they're saying that, you know, 5, 10, or 15%, depending on the study, of Americans have had the virus already. And the virus has not gone away. It's there. Nothing has changed. Even if there's 10% of the people that maybe aren't contagious anymore, we're still going to run into 90% of the people that are. So what has changed is behavior. You know, mitigation has been the change. Behavior has changed in this country. To go back to the old behavior, it concerns me. So let's say sports starts again. What are we going to do? What is your suggestion that we all do if a player does become contagious or does get the virus?
You know, Brian, that's a really, really good question. That's something that we may all need to face as our players get back into the gymnasium. I think a couple of things that we need to do. The problem is, Brian, is that we don't have a lot of really good testing right now. And the testing that's done has been very sporadic. And you're also right that some people, and that's a problem. I think we need to do a better job of testing people. There's other tests that are now being authorized. They're called antibody tests, which are much easier to administer. So I think those are really, really going to be key in helping us to detect those people that have been exposed to the virus and maybe not even known it. So I think that's going to be very, very important.
Yeah, specifically though, and I read your statements in your program, but what can we tell our listeners that if someone gets sick, what do we do? What do you suggest we do?
I think that if somebody comes back and they do test positive, the first thing we need to do is remove them, obviously, from the gym, right? I think that's very important. They need to self-isolate at home. And then what I think should be done is that then we need to be screening those athletes that this person was in contact with, right? And simple screening tests like checking their temperature, doing the simple questions, have they had any a dry cough or other things can, for the most part, detect detect the virus in those people that may have been exposed to it. If there's any question, then of course that we take it to the next level. 2 different tests to do. You can do the swab of the throat, which is called the PCR testing, or now the FDA has approved with some companies the antibody testing, which is easier to administer. So I think both those are possible. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Bob Bertucci. Bob is unique in that he coached Division I women and he's currently coaching Division I men, and he actually lives in the hot spot of where the virus was the biggest in the New York City area. Bob Bertucci.
Thanks, Brian. Bill, I'm really excited that you're on the program today, and it's great catching up with you again after so many years. Yeah, I did have the virus. My whole family had the virus. It's pretty nasty. And I was looking at your sheet, and I would probably consider we had probably a mild version of the virus based on how you categorize things, because except for my wife, nobody actually got hospitalized. But, you think about safe return to sport. And, of course, I've now been, tested, and retested and tested negative. I've recovered completely. But what's the chances of me going back in the gym? Am I going to get the virus again? Or anybody for that matter, any player that you might have had on your team that had the virus, went through this, recovered, and goes back into the gym?
Well, Bob, that's a really, really good question. And again, it seems like the science or the information, it evolves almost every day. I'm really glad that you recovered. I'm glad that your family recovered. What we've seen from the most recent studies that have come out of South Korea, because that's really was one of the hot spots for this virus, and they actually handled it very well. There was some concern that if you got infected, that you could get reinfected and that you could then catch it again, if you will. Well, the most recent studies just from the last week to 10 days have shown that it probably won't happen, that once you have gotten it, you're probably not going to get it again. There's a very good chance of that. And even though that the tests that are screening again, what they're detecting is they're detecting really the dead virus, which is the non-infectious one, meaning you still have particles of the virus inside of you, but it's not the one that's going to cause the disease. And so that's what that's what those tests are showing. So for now, we think there's pretty good odds, just like with other viruses. Once you get it, you're probably not going to get it again. So I think that's great news.
Another thing I've thought about, and I see this as we, for a safe return to sport, we have this phased opening of the country. And I've seen that actually start to morph into almost that people don't think the virus is even in existence anymore. I look at the Jersey Shore. I see the kids down there, and the way it just almost no regard for social distancing or wearing a mask, on the boardwalk and stuff like that. And you all pile into houses in groups. I mean, I realize that they might not be as susceptible, but again, what's the chances of them infecting other people and then having a reoccurrence of this virus?
Yeah, that is very significant. I think as we've got this phase coming out, if you will, and that's really the unknown part that we need more information about. It is possible that they are carriers and are asymptomatic, and we worry about them transmitting the disease to people who will get sick. I think we have to have a phased reintroduction to our society for all of this. I think that's really important, and we have to do a better job, I think, of testing people, I think the antibody testing is really the way to go, because that's an easier test to do and much less expensive. But you're right. We're opening things up, and it's not only for our sports, but look at restaurants and industry, people getting back to work. My office is here in Burbank, and the whole movie industry has been shut down completely. And so it touches every corner of our society. And so I think we just really need to be thoughtful and intentional as we all go back to our lives, that we really practice these good habits that we've learned over the last couple of months: good hand washing, social distancing. The mask is really controversial, whether or not we're going to need that, but I think for now, I think it's probably necessary.
Yeah, I mean, just with all the civil unrest we have in the country right now, it almost seems like the virus has taken a back seat, and you know, and of course, you know, with that kind of behavior, we're not doing social distancing. We're actually in situations where if we're yelling or screaming or, you know, coughing because of tear gas, I mean, it seems like we're setting ourselves up, you know, just logically for a reoccurrence of this. You know, I guess my last question would be, what is the chance that we're going to have a vaccine by October or November?
You know, that's a very good question. The vaccine, of course, would be a game changer for us, but the vaccines take a while to be produced. It's not going to happen overnight, and I think it's not going to happen by the fall unless some miracle happens. I know one of the companies has had some progress with their vaccine, but these have to be tested over and over again for safety purposes, and it's going to be another. Bob and everyone, I think it's going to be another 12 to 18 months before we have a vaccine for this. So I wouldn't hang my hat on it. So in the meantime, I think we have to really practice some re-educate ourselves about what's the best way to stay safe and stay away from this virus. I'm a big fan of washing hands, cleaning surfaces. I think that's very important. And I think if we do that, I think the majority of the time, I think we'll probably be very good not catching the virus.
Well, Bob, I know that Ruth has some specific questions. I had more general questions, but she has some specific ones related to, you know, return to sport and what's going on in Texas. So I'm going to turn it over to Ruth and let her run with it from here.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Doc, there's a couple of things. One question that came in, and it said the NCAA core principles of re-socialization of college sports was scrapped after only 2 weeks, and not a single state qualified to meet phase 1 to our knowledge. No state in the union seems to have a drop in cases. What has changed to give the government and governing bodies comfort to return to sport?
Ruth, I think what's happening is I think you can only tell people not to do something for so long. And I think, and what we've seen with the civil unrest, they all sort of coincide. I think everybody was patient for 4 to 6 weeks and even 8 weeks, but now we're getting to the point like we have to return to our lives. And so I don't think things have changed that much. I do think that the virus, as we've seen, as the climates warm up, the virus will become less stable, and that will be a big help. So things really haven't changed that much. I think what I worry about is more in the fall, is when if this virus hangs around, a reintroduction of it during the fall. But really, things haven't changed that much. I think we can do a better job, though, of protecting our elderly. I think that's really the key.
Okay, that's great. Now, in Texas and Dallas specifically, they have been doing outside beach for almost a month. They just started back last week in small groups. On Monday, they started back in team training. And in June 15th, they are starting competition based on what the governor has said. Now, when I look over what you sent us to look over, I'm wondering, wouldn't it be valuable for USA Volleyball to provide some of these specific things? Like I see, do not sit prolonged periods of time near individuals outside the home. Do not ride in a car with individuals. Wear a face mask. 12 feet in exercising. The coach wears a mask. I think these are specific that have been made for the national team, but I think there's two issues. One is a lot of club and facility owners aren't really getting this type of information that's specific to volleyball. They've been given general information from the government, and they say, hey, June 15th, you can compete. So Is there something that can be filtered down to some of these facilities? Because I see facilities as one, the other is the kids and the coaches, but it seems like they work together.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Ruth. I shared with all of you the protocol that we're having to try to get our national team players back into the gym. It's very strict how they come in, how they're tested, how they're screened, and how they stay apart during their training. You're right, it has not filtered down to the club level. And I think that would be nice if it could, but I think at the club level, you're going to find some resistance because these clubs they really want to reopen, and they're trying to reopen in a hurry. And I think time will tell, and hopefully we won't have another outbreak, but I do think that they may be rushing a few things, and hopefully they're practicing some good, disinfectant techniques on the courts and on the balls, and also good hand washing and cleanliness and hygiene in the gym.
So what if I'm an athlete? The most important thing for me to know is I should take the least amount of things in a bag. Once I get going in, I should already be dressed out. I maybe can walk into the gym and put my shoes on, but I should have my mask on the whole time when I walk in the gym, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Be ready, prepared, get into the gym, keep your social distance, get on the court, do what you need to do, and then get out and don't hang around each other like we typically do in a team environment.
Okay. Mick, I knew that you had said you had another question here. Let me see if you can get, there you go.
Yeah, well, I do have a question. So I guess, Billy, from what I heard, we should, maybe Brian, Ruth, and I should be kamikazes, and we should decide whether we want to go out and get the virus so that we will then be, so to speak, neutralized. And then if we survive, then we can go about our normal function like all these young people. And I'm being a little bit facetious, but I'm not in some ways. The older people that are in good shape who are locked in can't be locked in much longer. But why are the older people in the nursing homes dying? Is it because they have other problems other than just their age? I think for an older person, one, they don't understand why younger people don't want to protect them. Two, they might want to make a choice about going out and challenging the virus. And if they win, then they can have a life again. Those are some serious issues for people of age, I think.
Mick, it really is. Those are significant issues. And what we've seen is this virus really is more attracted to older people. And what we've seen is because, I think we talked about this a day or two ago, the virus attaches to the body via something called an ACE receptor. And young people don't have a lot of ACE receptors, but older people have a lot of ACE receptors. So think of as the virus comes in, it be able to attach to this receptor, and older people have a lot more of them than younger people. So that, coupled with the fact that it typically will go to the heart or the lungs, you've got a problem. If you've got some underlying health disease, for example, asthma, or you've got bronchitis, and you're older, I really wouldn't recommend going out there and trying to challenge the virus. I would really wait this out. If you've got significant health conditions, I really would wait. I don't think it's really safe. And what we've seen in a nursing home, it's like the perfect storm. You've got people coupled together, close by. It's hard to keep clean surfaces, and plus they almost all have some other, what we say, comorbidities or other significant medical conditions that it's really devastated our nursing homes, unfortunately.
And one last thing, just as a parent, are you going to allow your kids to get involved in youth sport here this summer?
So I have 4 children, and they all, of course, have been driving my wife crazy for the past 2 months by staying home, not participating in club volleyball or club soccer. I feel comfortable at this point getting them out. I really do. We've not had we haven't known anybody who's had the disease. All of us have been healthy. There's always a chance they may get it, but I think I feel very comfortable easing them back into their sports, getting them back into the gym. In fact, we're going to do a trial with my daughter's club volleyball team, probably starting early next week. And we have access to this antibody test, which is made by QuestCap. And we're going to screen all the players to see if they've been exposed to the virus. And then we'll test them again, 3 or 5 days later, and maybe every week for the next couple of weeks, just to reassure the parents that everything's okay, that we can get them back. And I'll probably do the same thing for my kids. So I think we need to get them back out there. Absolutely. In a prudent and safe manner.
Well, Bill, thanks so much for being on. Brian, did you have a question? Unmute.
I think the group keeps muting me on purpose. I know them.
Yeah.
I heard you speak twice now about the antibody test. And what I hear is it's everywhere from 15 to 50% inaccurate. Is there a new test, or is there a certain test that you think that you would recommend as being more accurate, or should we wait to see until another one comes out?
Brian, that is a really, really good point. So what the antibody test does, it detects people that have been exposed to it. Whereas the other test, which is called the swab test, where they stick it down your throat, actually measures the virus. If you're active and you've got it, it'll come back positive. The FDA approved some of these tests under what's called an emergency use authorization. They've looked at it and say, we can't completely approve of it, but we approve it of enough because we think it's sensitive. The one that it seems to be the most sensitive is the one that I'm familiar with. It's called the PCL COVID-19 IgG IgM Rapid Gold Antibody Test, which is being produced here from QuestCap, which got the license from South Korea. This is the one that the South Koreans use to screen. And what we've seen is the sensitivity, meaning if you've been exposed to it, is about 92%. So that's actually a very good sensitive test. Whereas if you look at the sensitivity of the other test called the swab, which is the PCR test, it's actually less than that. So this is a very good test, and the specificity, meaning a true negative, for sure you don't have it, is 98%. So I think it's an excellent test, and it's been tested in South Korea with over 2,000 people. So that's the one that I recommend. Has to be through a special lab for now, but hopefully within the next couple of weeks it'll become more widespread and be able to administered by doctors.
Okay, well, I guess that's all we have time for, Billy, but it's been really wonderful having you on. I can't tell you, all of us feel attached to you. I don't know if people know that you were on 2 national champion NC2A teams and one of the best setters in Southern California. In fact, you were setting at the time that we had Dvorak and a bunch of great setters in Southern California at that time, and we all enjoyed watching you greatly. But thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure the club coaches, the high school coaches, even the collegiate coaches are going to have more questions for you. So maybe we could bring you back in a week or two with some very specific things to talk to, if you would be agreeable to that. But we can talk about that down the road a little bit. For everybody that's listening, next week we're going to go a little bit different direction with our guests. We have 2 guests from sports manufacturing companies. Jake Light, the president and CEO of Baden Sports, Baden Ball Company, handles major balls for basketball, soccer, softball, baseball, and volleyball. Will be on, along with Jim Peterson. SNA Sports, Jim's company handles sport netting systems, poles, and basketball goals in that regard. And they're going to be here to talk with us about what's happening in their industry relative to the virus and all of that. So Ruth, I'm going to throw it back to you to finish up here. And thanks to everybody for listening, and especially thanks for you, Billy, being on. Thank you.
Thanks, Mick. For those interested in hosting one of our championship skill series clinics, please contact us at info@volleyballmasters.com. Now, watch for our upcoming series, Journey of the Legends. that will feature interviews with our master coaches of Mick, Brian, Bob, and Ruth. Now, be with us next week with Master Coaches Weekly Buzz. Follow us on Facebook, Volleyball Master Coaches. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, VB Master Coaches. And John, we are back to you for you to give us our update on our coaching conversations that you do.
All right. Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. Thanks to the doc for sharing his wisdom and insight. As I've mentioned before, this is part of a series of coaching conversations that I'm doing on a regular basis. Obviously, we're doing these every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, so hopefully you'll come back and keep going. And it sounds like we'll be doing it for a couple more months, so that'll be good. My other conversations are obviously a little bit more coaching specific. You can check those out at my blog, coachingvb.com. You'll also find them posted on Twitter at coachingvb and on this Facebook page for those of you who are on the live stream, Coaching Volleyball. So until next week, we hope you have a good week. And if you're getting back into training, we hope you're doing it safely.